before I start, something that I was kind of connecting with in my morning sit this morning, and a very like physical element of meditation, because I tend to have a not a great posture, and I tend to slump a little bit. That kind of it puts a certain restriction on my breath, which isn't really a health risk as far as I can tell. Never know. But I was really tuning in, and I'm aware of this. I've been aware of this before, but I was really picking it up this morning how that kind of closing up of my uh, around my solar plexus, particularly, how it s- um, the emotions that were there, the unpleasant emotions, get more stuck, and that when I was able to kind of just bring my posture up a little bit and open up a little bit, that the emotional energy then is able to be released and it moves more with the breath. Uh, uh, it's something that, whew, it's the type of thing that if you told your doctor this, they'd probably think you were crazy, but it's for sure real. you know, I felt it. I have felt it many times, but I was really aware of it this morning. And so just to like reminder, there's such a tendency to think of meditation as a mental practice. And it's partially a mental practice, but it's very much a physical practice. And connecting with what's going on in the body and working with that um, is really, really key. Uh, so particularly if you find yourself at all like kind of stuck and feeling like, oh, my meditation is kind of stuck, try just lifting up, and opening up your chest and seeing if that helps the movement of energy and emotions that way. Um, Thanks for people saying hello. New people who are first time here. It's very nice. Um, yeah, I'm also, I just was talking to my sister-in-law, and I mentioned a couple weeks ago that a grandniece was born. Her son's child, who's named Ellen, which is the name of my sister-in-law's name, and and that she was having a heart. There's a little hole in her heart, and so it's continuing to be a challenge there's dealing with. So I continue to send loving kindness and sort of ask you guys, maybe we can start the sit this morning with a bit of thinking about hearts. I think hearts are interesting. So let's sit back into your meditation posture, and as I said, starting by really being aware of having your heart space, your solar plexus, your belly be very open. And this is actually challenging, partly because one of the reasons we close that down is to protect ourselves. And the one of the issues for addicts is our fear of our own feelings. So one of the reasons we um, used substances to shut down, to escape. And so in recovery too, that fear can still be there, and we can feel even more vulnerable without having something to control it, substance. So we we step into this approach to practice carefully. Notice if there is fear or some kind of, might not feel like fear, just might feel like resistance or discomfort. But when you really open up the body, the front of the body, so we usually use our breath as a focus, as a concentration object in mindfulness meditation. But it's not unusual at times to notice your heartbeat. And that can be a little disquieting as well. I don't know if you ever get that sort of anxiety when you start to just tune into your heart beating. Realize how delicate our body is, just this little muscle in our chest that just keeps going, thumping away, beat after beat, minute after minute, days and weeks, months and years. So just for a moment, imagining a little baby with a tiny hole that makes it so that the heart won't properly pump the blood through the body. Imagining that your mind, the power of your love, could heal that tiny hole. And many of us already feel as if there's some wound in our hearts. And so the idea that there's actually something anatomical like that is not really a stretch. So just sending healing to this little girl, little Ellen. And may that healing radiate out to all the babies who are at risk, each child born so fragile to this world. And just remembering how fragile life is, how precious, how rare. And letting that sense of kindness and care and love go out to all living beings. All beings wish for happiness and safety. All beings are subject to impermanence. With this understanding that no matter my wishes for anyone or even for myself, the challenges of change must come to each of us. The Buddha guides us towards a balanced view of this called equanimity. This is a form of wisdom to hold the impermanence, to hold the suffering of the world without being overwhelmed, without getting lost in our fears, or craving, or wish to control, but having the wisdom to accept this so that we balance our love and compassion with this wisdom. Without that wisdom, that caring can overwhelm us. And then we really can't be of service to anyone. So this is the challenge of deep compassion, is to hold it with wisdom. So now staying with your breath, even as thoughts or feelings of compassion may continue, staying in your own body and taking care of yourself. Just letting the peace of understanding help you to be present and calm. If you find yourself caught up in a long story, another thought stream, just gently come back, coming back into the body, into the breath, into the felt experience. It's not some flaw in our meditation that our mind wanders. It happens to everyone. And it doesn't even really hold us back as long as you keep returning, connecting to the breath, connecting to the body, letting go. You'll feel that gradual progression into calm, into presence. We don't need to achieve some perfect silence or perfect stillness. Mindfulness is very powerful in small doses. All right. Oh, couple little announcements. I did actually update my YouTube page and my Zoom page, so all of the existing recordings of my talks are available if you missed anything that you want to listen to. And I am teaching tonight for Napa Valley Insight meditation. Maybe Angela can find a link for that. 7 o'clock. I'm doing a series for them on the Noble Eightfold Path. So tonight I'm doing a talk on right intention. Oh, that was quick. Jeez, on the ball. And I'm also teaching at New York Insight. Did you already put that in or something? On I think the 26th of March, a half day event. Yeah, wisdom and compassion on the path of recovery. So if you're interested in any more of Kevin, I also heard from 10% Happier, and they want to interview me about my book, Living Kindness. So that's going to happen next month. I know, it's cool, isn't it, Anne? Yeah, recognition for my underappreciated book. Yeah, thanks. I'm excited about that. I think Dan was interested in my kind of counter take. I think he likes things that are sort of challenging of the standard approach to things. So that's all the news. We're still in step 7, and I could hang out in step 7 for a long time. I'm not really looking forward to step 8. I was like, there's not much in here. But I just, I think step 7, we're in my book, One Breath at a Time, for those who might be coming on here. We've been in here for a year now, and we've made it to step 7. But I have to say that I think step 7 and these particular 2 parts, with not the greatest titles, A Dirty Word and Don't Overdo It, are for me the heart of this book, and the place where I feel like I didn't know what I was going to write about step 7 when I started the book, and when I got into this part of it, it's where I feel like something sort of the creative juices kicked in, and I think there's a lot of richness here. I'm actually going to repeat. I don't remember exactly because it was last Tuesday, so that's certainly too long ago to remember clearly. I think I said a couple of these things, but I want to repeat them from the section called A Dirty Word, because I just really value a couple of passages in here. So the section is about renunciation, and the thing is about these 2 sections, A Dirty Word is about renunciation, and Don't Overdo It is about being careful that you don't sort of turn renunciation into actually self-destructive behavior. So they're kind of balanced. They're these sort of balancing sections of the book. But I particularly like this quote from Ajahn Amaro, and then what I was able to bring out of it, where I'm talking about first of all, sort of the idea that renunciation or just like getting sober is going to be this sort of bleak, boring life that probably many of us imagine when we imagine getting sober before we actually do it, right? It's a typical, right? We project out what it's going to be, and then we decide we don't want it. We don't want to experience that, so we don't do it, right? Even though what we're projecting is just a complete fiction. So I say for some people who first encounter Buddhism, monasticism might carry the same sense of bleakness that sobriety does for the alcoholic who is still drinking. The Theravada monastic tradition is quite strict. Besides giving up sex, monks and nuns refrain from eating after noon, from watching TV and films and listening to music, from handling money and driving a car. And there's more, much more, for monks, over 200 rules. Essentially, your whole life is scripted. There's little of what we would call personal freedom. And yet, freedom is exactly what monastics experience. Ajahn Amaro, the English monk, explains it this way: it's not like ordinary life with some bits cut out. That's kind of his English, like, you know, some bits cut out. It's not like ordinary human language with some bits cut out. It endeavors to manifest in the physical realm our innate, divine, transcendent nature. That's why many people find monasticism both appealing and frightening. So the second sentence is a little, obscure, manifesting our innate, divine, transcendent nature. But the first one is the one that really strikes me. It's not like ordinary life with some bits cut out. And that's the one that kind of grabbed my attention. And then, so that's why I followed that quote with this, my own words. True sobriety is much the same. It's not ordinary life with the drugs and alcohol cut out. It's a new way of living, of relating to ourselves and to the world. It's not a different version of the life we are living. It's a completely new life, one that can't be imagined until you are there. And it is both appealing and frightening. Again, using Amaro's term. So that to me is just like a critical idea, and one that I think is so hard, for those of us in recovery. I know many of you have been in recovery for a long time, and you've, faced people who were struggling, trying to get sober or trying to stay sober, and particularly people who have not experienced sobriety and have not experienced recovery. And I know sobriety refers specifically to alcoholism, so I mean that in the broadest sense, which is why I generally use recovery, but recovery can sort of be a vague term anyway. Um, but I think many of us, if not all of us, have encountered the person who's imagining quitting their behavior, their addiction, as being this really bleak, boring place, like, and maybe in the beginning, of course, it can be it can be not boring, but it can be like a drama that's not helpful. So, so until we really experience it, until we get both feet on the ground in a recovery, we don't really understand what it is. And when we do, we realize, wow, this isn't like anything else that I've had in my life. This isn't like my old life just without drinking. It's like this is something completely different. So I guess it's something I felt like that was an important thing to communicate to people who were struggling with with the idea of giving it up. So I'm going to go to the next section of the book, the "Don't Overdo It" section, which is the balancing, the renunciation part. And I tell this story in the beginning of this section about being drunk, and I'm wearing this jean jacket that's got this beautiful embroidery on it, and the person I'm with is like, "Oh, I really like your jacket," and I just like take off the jacket and give it to her, and she was just a friend, and she was an old friend, and it was like just one of those stupid things you do, when you're drunk, where you think you're being cool, and it was, and I was in this phase of having been with this guru who was like, if someone says they like something, you should give it to them, spontaneous generosity. But of course, it wasn't spontaneous generosity. It was just drunken stupidness. So it's sort of an example of really missing the point. It's not, it, generosity is not just an action, right? It's uh, appropriate. I'm talking about intention tonight. The intention behind the action is what's really important, um, which is, the same with quitting drinking or using, right? This is one of the reasons why people relapse is because they quit for the wrong reasons. They quit to satisfy their parents, or they quit to satisfy the court, or their boss or something, and there there isn't the true motivation to let go. So in my notes about this section, I mentioned the abstinence violation effect, which I didn't know about when I wrote the book. So, which is the tendency to a relapse when our uh, when our renunciation is actually repression. So to really give something up in a skillful way, it needs to come out of an authentic letting go, and a letting go that is uh, there's an openness to it. You're feeling the the suffering. I mean, to me, the key to it is you feel the suffering, and that's why you let go. There's something essentially spontaneous about that. It's the touching the hot stove. That's the AA Big Book describes getting to a point where the idea of alcohol is just completely alienating, and so that we recoil as if from a hot flame. And whereas the abstinence violation effect, which is this, language that comes out of this psychology and psychological studies of addiction, suggests that if we if we are forcing our abstinence, if we're repressing the craving, once we that first of all, that's not going to be sustainable, and once we relapse, that we will binge, because it's just like a pendulum. You've sort of forced yourself in one direction, and once you break that, you just swing back to the other side. Um, and that's one of the. It's actually an argument against abstinence, which of course in AA and other abstinence-based programs, that's not advised, but it's really comes out of the kind of harm reduction model, which has its excuse me, which has a role. I see harm reduction as useful as a transitional element in coming into recovery, but I don't think harm reduction is a sustainable model that is like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna cut back on my drinking. Yeah, but well, it all depends. Maybe if you're not an alcoholic. Anyway, I don't want to get into that one. So I have this note here. I say renunciation has to come from the heart. We have to be entirely ready. And one of the great questions about addiction is, how do you help someone to be ready? And this is a question that I've never been able to answer, and I have been asked that question, both by like parents of addicts, by interviewers, uh, by addicts themselves who are struggling. I don't have the answer. And, you know, this is like one of those things that's very much part of the sort of AA mythology that, oh, well, God has to do it, or grace or something like that. And I don't know what that means really, uh, just in practical terms. I mean, many of us got sober or got clean or came into recovery, and once we had established that, looked back and said, well, it didn't seem like there was really a logical process by which that happened. So I really have to attribute it to the grace of God, you know. And I think that's kind of how Bill Wilson and Dr. Bob felt, and kind of what they passed on in the AA literature and the AA mythology. But I am a karma fundamentalist. That is to say that I believe that everything that happens has a cause. Now, you could say grace is a cause, but I guess then what is causing the grace? Because grace can't, if grace just exists outside of the realm of causality, which is kind of how it's attributed. I know I'm digging myself into a hole here, but this is a discussion I've had enough times that I feel like I have to get back to it every once in a while. That so my sense is something has to cause it, you know, some combination, and you know, it's it it may be internal, it may be external, uh, but if we believe that it's grace or an external God that has intervened in our life to make us sober, then we believe that everything does not have a cause, that everything is not the result of cause and effect within the sort of realm of mind body that we recognize as existing. So um so that the problem with that for me particularly is that it's really disempowering. It means that I didn't I didn't have a role in getting sober, so what's to stop me from, what's to stop God or grace from being removed? And so it's like I'm helpless somehow, and I don't like that. All right, well, I've rambled enough on that topic. Let me see if where else I want to go here. I see people are chiming in a little bit here. Maybe I should take a look at the chat, because this section might be a section that we cover for a couple days. Oh, people are getting serious now. Uh, what? AKA white knuckling. Yeah, yeah, white knuckling is a good, that's what repression is. The legal system helped me to become ready. Yeah, right. And that was cause and effect, right? Helped you. The links, oh, wow. Phew. Yes, the 12 links of dependent arising. Yes, actually, I have a whole piece somewhere on that. Dependent origination is the Buddha kind of taking apart the process by which suffering arises and suffering ends, and it's very systematic and very subtle. uh, People who come in non-voluntarily have success rates similar to voluntary. I think that's interesting. Yeah, well, because right, once you get it, you might be like, oh, I didn't want this, but now that I have it, I like it. Uh, Can you not be a karma fundamentalist if you are a practicing Buddhist? You have to talk to all the practicing Buddhists. Um, because I had this debate on stage with another Buddhist teacher who was like, no, there's grace. And I was like, yeah, but what is that? So it was actually very uncomfortable. Uh, So thank you. What about mystery, randomness? Yeah, I, I a mystery is, in my view, and I'm just the teacher here, so I get to just like claim that I know stuff. I don't know. These are, you know, but to me, a mystery by its very name is something that we just don't understand. It has a causality, but we just haven't figured it out yet. That's the whole point of a mystery. When you read a mystery, at the end you find out what happened, right? Oh, it was mysterious until we figured it out. Randomness would be, to me. Now, again, like I'm not a you know, a physics expert, because there's like chaos theory and stuff. But do we get sober like it's just through random circumstances? I, that's kind of scary to me, because then someone else would be like, I'd really like to get sober, but the random circumstances that cause that have not arisen. Like, what? Like, I don't know. Uh, is Buddhism non-theistic? Well, it is. Most Westerners will tell you that it's atheistic. I believe that it's non-theistic in the sense that you're probably asking. There is no God in Buddhism. There is no, excuse me, there are many gods in Buddhism. There is no monotheistic God in the Abrahamic sense of Jehovah, God, Allah, the people of the book. But there are gods like there are in Hinduism, but they don't have that is, they are not all powerful. The gods actually come to the Buddha for teachings in Buddhism. So, but that's mythology. Thank you. Uh, boy, oh boy. So you guys are really on the chat today. So maybe I should let me say one or two more things about renunciation and non-renunciation. It's true that renunciation is a powerful tool, but as with all aspects of spiritual practice, we have to make sure we are working in our own abilities, not trying to achieve some idealized state or behavior that doesn't suit us. Well, as I was reading that, I started thinking about what we're discussing. And are we spending a lot of time trying to come up, or am I trying to spending a lot of time trying to answer a question that doesn't have to be answered? You know, uh, I don't know. I guess it's important to me that there's causality in recovery. Because again, like people say, well, how do you get sober? And I'm like, well, this is what I know. This is what worked. Um, um, when I abandoned my life in Boston to travel with Ananda, which is part of my backstory there, I was overreaching. This kind of excess spiritual grasping can be almost as dangerous as excess indulgence. When I gave my Sufi jacket away, I was acting out of a spiritual behavior that wasn't based in true understanding. I wasn't letting go. I was just drunk and stupid and trying to act spiritual. Renunciation isn't a panacea. The Buddha's own journey shows the limits of renunciation, how he realized that his austerities needed to be balanced with proper nourishment, clothing, medicine, and housing. Some of us can get caught up in this movement toward letting go and lose sight of our own needs. So here at the end of this paragraph, ultimately, it is our mental state, not our physical one which we are trying to purify through spiritual practice. So this is what the Buddha says about renunciation. He says it's, the external is a way to support the internal, but really the kind of renunciation that I am talking about is renouncing greed, hatred, and delusion. That is true renunciation. The rest of it is just a support for that. And we know as addicts, like, we're not going to have a spiritual renunciation if we are still active in our addiction. So we have to, in order to get to a place where we can let go of greed, hatred, and delusion, we have to have enough clarity that comes from our sobriety. But I keep saying sobriety, functional word. So that's what you really have to come back to. I mean, it's I find myself getting caught up in this idea of renunciation and sort of that, like, comparing yourself to to monks and nuns, and like, oh, I'm not really as spiritual as them. Um, you know, I've encountered monastics who struggled uh, too with their letting go on various levels, and so putting on robes isn't, or taking precepts isn't, an automatic cure for that. How is renunciation different to attachment? It's the opposite of attachment, I think. Yeah. So, Julie, I see you said you have a question about today's entry in my Daily Reflections book. Do you want to unmute yourself and ask that question?
Sure. Thank you so much. This is just amazing and so rich. I love your daily reflections book. I am
Um,
just gobsmacked by it. So, to me, every day, today's entry on clinging is that to me is what I should be reading every day, in addition to every other page, because that is addiction is clinging, and that's what I am. I'm an addict, and I cling. So it looks like, and uh, I'm studying now about step 7 in many different ways, a lot of Dharma groups. And what you're saying resonates with me, but it says at the beginning we're investigating where we cling, what that experience is, in my understanding, and then in the last full paragraph, if we return to the breath and turn away from the triggers for clinging, we will let go. Wait a minute, turn away from the triggers? I thought we were leaning into the triggers to explore them, investigate them, see what our experience is with them. And, but if we turn away from them, we will let go. So I haven't, I'm not doing the long-term sustainable letting go. I'm doing, as said, the short-term kind of unsustainable letting go. Clinging is not dissolving. So see if this is true. Well, my reaction is, of course, well, it isn't true for me. But I know there's truth there. So I'm very word and language oriented.
yeah,
I'm having trouble balancing investigating the triggers, leaning into them, exploring them
right.
as pools of opportunity for investigation and change, and yet turning away from them. Oh, then I'll let go, and then clinging is just going to not happen anymore. And I'm struggling,
Well,
and I am.
it's easier to write spiritual things than it is to actually do them. I will say that. So let me just go grab my copy of the book. Okay, hang on.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, today is the 16th.
Yes.
Hmm.
I don't want to gobble up all the time.
Oh
I
no,
just,
I think it's a really great. I appreciate, uh, Julie. I don't think you're gobbling up the time because these are questions that we all have to work with. So essentially, it's. I mean, it's interesting because it kind of speaks to exactly what I'm talking about today, which is kind of a balance, right, between the renunciation and and not sort of overdoing that. But here, what I'm saying is that you have to see the experience, the suffering. You have to see the pain, and as I'm talking about here, the triggers. But if you just if you stay focused on that, then there isn't really a letting go. Seeing them and how the pain that they cause, and really allowing them, like, oh, this is painful, and this is what I do not want, you know, then is the motivation to let go. And at a certain point, you you step away from it. You're not repressing. This is different from saying, oh, get away, I don't want to feel this. It's like I feel it, but then I say, okay, that's enough. I don't have to hang out here with this trigger, with this feeling. Now I need to turn towards something else. And so it's a balance. We have to find, where is that point? How much attention does this experience, does this, yeah, this trigger or this emotion need from me? And how much do I need to step away? Because what can happen is that we get that instead of it sort of being let go of by looking at it and by feeling it, that we actually start to feed it in a way, or it starts to kind of grow. And so we have to be very careful in this. We have to be, conscious of it without letting it sort of um, take hold in us. That makes sense.
I got it. Because what we're doing, if we keep investigating it and get stuck in that investigative process, then we're just clinging
Right.
to the suffering and to the investigative process. We're not
Right.
getting out of the muck or anything. So
Right.
we're just clinging to something else. And that's what I do. Go from one clinging to the next clinging
Right.
and wondering why I can't let go. Very clarifying.
Yeah, I mean, and this is right. And there was some references. I made some references to this today. This idea of the idealizing, or we get, because it's what we do as addicts, right? We get fixated on one thing. That's kind of the essence of addiction, right? Oh, now I've got the solution. I just have to like be aware of it all the time. And it's like, no, 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 no. It's always like balance, and and not getting fixated on one thing, and sort of staying in balance, saying, okay, I see that feeling is there. I mean, you know, I I've been in this, like, I'm calling it my birthday blues mood, but I think it's just whatever. I've been in kind of a down state, emotional state, and this morning it's very much I was describing my meditation this morning, and what was happening was, like, I was feeling this stuck emotion, this unpleasant emotion, and I felt it, but then I started to just breathe. And at a certain point, it was like, okay, I'm with the feeling. Then I kind of fixed my posture like I was describing. And then I was just with my breath. And then, like normal, my mind wandered. And when I came back, the feeling had actually really settled. And it was like I had given it space, and then I had kind of turned away. And then just through that process of sitting and not fixating and not running, that it just kind of, uh, emotions have I call it like their half-life, right? Which is like with nuclear fuel, right? Nuclear waste. It's kind of like the emotions have a half-life, and then when you don't feed them, they just kind of like fade gradually. Uh, and it's not that you're repressing them or pushing them away. You're seeing them, but then you're not feeding them. It's a delicate balance, and there isn't some ideal or perfection we're going to get to where it's like, okay, got it together, never gonna have a bad feeling again, never gonna be overwhelmed by my feelings again. Just like, working with it all. So thank you all. I like that line, Dana. Look back, but don't stare. Yeah, it's a koan. Yes, I guess it is a koan. Um, Angela has put in all the like contact information. Oh, for leaving Donna, which is always nice. Thank you. The link for tonight's talk. Um, so thank you
Yeah, so
all.
Hey, Kevin. Yeah, go ahead, Anne.
Yeah,
Sorry, I just have to get this in.
go ahead.
This whole mystery thing about how we get sober
Hmm.
and all that, just rich stuff, which I could go explore. But tracing back recovery
Yeah,
is something that, I just keep coming back to if I don't understand, if I'm thinking too much about how it's all about karma and, getting sober, and that doesn't make sense to me. To do that exercise and to keep it in mind is that we have a lot more power in our run up to getting sober if we're lucky,
yeah,
um, than we think. And
yeah,
it sows the seed for seeing our goodness and
yeah,
our intention on this path. And it
yeah,
really begins before we think it does. So
yeah. Thanks, Anne. And for those who don't know, she's referring to an exercise in my workbook, Buddhism in the 12 Steps workbook, called Tracing Back Recovery, which tries to get at this question. And my point being, which in a way, what I was saying was, you're not as bad a person as you think you are. you know, you there's this image, and I talk about this. There's this sort of idea particularly in 12-step programs, that like before you got into recovery, you were bad and everything, and then after, then you're good somehow. As long as you do enough inventory, then you can be good, you know. And I don't buy it. I think we are, before and after, we are people who are full of mixed motives and mixed behaviors and imperfections, but there's a lot of good in us. And I think as addicts, we tend to downplay our good side, and in some ways we're afraid of our good side. We're afraid that we're going to become inflated, and then that's going to lead to relapse, or we're afraid of, that if we're having too much fun. So um, yeah. So thanks for all those nice comments. Um, a disease of perception, indeed. Uh, yeah, Julie, you're welcome to come. I think, I think it's the 26th, isn't it? That uh, New York Insight. Oh no, it's the 27th. You're right. Yeah, you come anytime you want, as far as I'm concerned. I don't know what I'm not going to control that event. That'll be New York Insight controlling whether you can come. So, blessings. You know, I'm assuming that you're all Democrats, and so you're all going to get vaccinated. Uh, it's just amazing to me that there are people who are deciding that they they don't want to, whatever. delusion is powerful, very powerful. So I'm fortunate that I have been fully vaccinated. My wife has been fully vaccinated, and even my daughter got vaccinated. Woohoo! So we can all hang out and party. Uh, Second
I'm
shot
leaving in
yesterday.
an hour to get my shot.
All right, George. Great, because I was thinking, Colorado might be a stopover for me one of these days.
Love it.
Yeah, it could happen.
Love it. And
So,
can I just say, I love your daily reflections. I mean, I've loved all of your books, but I gotta say, it is fantastic.
wow.
Of any reflections book I've ever seen, it's just so much more meaty and useful every day's reading. So if you don't have it, those of you listening, I recommend it wholeheartedly.
Well, thanks, George. I've had a lot of insecurities about that book as I was writing it. It was really hard to write. Not It's a lot easier to, I don't know, because it was like one day and then you're done. You have to start again and come up with another idea for the goddamn next day. Like, what the hell am I supposed to say? I'm running out of ideas. It felt like I was afraid that it was like forced somehow, but I did try to do a lot of editing and try to make it work. So I'm glad that you people feel it's worthy.
Yeah. Step of the month. How can you go wrong?
Yeah, I know it is a great one of the great coincidences
Yeah.
of reality that it's just a mystery, or maybe it's grace, or God made the 12 steps fits 12 months. Yeah, but yeah, that definitely helps. All right, you guys. So Friday, I may continue this part of the book because I wanted to talk about, I might go through this Kabir poem, which I love. But we shall see. But nonetheless, it'll be on this Zoom, not the Spirit Rock Zoom. And see you then, or next week, or whenever.
Thanks, Kevin. Wonderful.